Guruswamy Center presents a series of dialogues that are being conducted with public intellectuals to promote discussion and debate as a cornerstone of a healthy democracy. In this episode, we have Mohan Guruswamy and Parakala Prabhakar participating. Mohan Guruswamy is an economist, columnist, and a political commentator and author. And Parakala Prabhakar is a political economist and public policy analyst. The theme for today's episode is on the role of governors. Prabhakar and Mohan discuss the need for the governor's office, what entitles a person to become a governor, what should they be the guardians of, how should they uphold the dignity of the office, and the process for having a healthy governorship in the country.
Mohan, I always say, pardon my repetition, that now we are marking 75th anniversary of our independence. And I always feel that this is the time for us, this whole year, we should examine, re-examine, revisit, review, introspect, and very closely about our institutions, our practices, and our electoral system, our governance structures, right from taxation to the election of the president, all that. The way we decide things, the way we pass legislations, the way we elect our representatives, the way we adjudicate the disputes between state and citizen, between citizen and citizen, all the entire gamut. I think we should look at it from the kind of experience we had for the last 75 years and how do we go forward. Sadly, that's not much is happening, but let us take this opportunity to look at the institution of governor. For one, I find it very difficult to convince myself that this office is necessary, because I had, irrespective of what the constitutional provisions say, that he or she constitutes the government, and the governor appoints the cabinet, and the cabinet ministers are at his or her pleasure, and all that, all the flowery language that we have in the constitution. I have practically seen, some of my father's colleagues and contemporaries were governors, they worked as governors. It's such a boring thing. There's no work for governor. Even the ceremonial functions that he or she discharges are very banal and very, uninteresting things. I'll tell you, one of the regular routines of a governor is to look at the weather report that comes in the morning or in the evening in some states and sign it. And the address that he or she delivers to the state legislature is written by the government. I have written some of the, when I was advisor in the government of Andhra Pradesh, we have written the governor's addresses. There's practically no role. I think the republic, our democratic process, democratic structure, our governance will not lose anything at all if we do away with this kind of an office and institution.
I think you're right, as long as things are functioning constitutionally and well. I was eyewitness to the dismissal of N.T. Ramarao by his man Ramlal. I was physically there when NTR and Jayapal Reddy and others walked in to the little room. The governor just came out and said, "No, you're dismissed." And I noticed that the IG of police, then the DGP, Mahendra Reddy, who I knew quite well, he was coming with N.T. Ramarao, and then as soon as he heard the word dismissal, Then the governor said, told the IG, Mahendra, please take him out. So Mahendra went up to him, saluted him. He says, I'm sorry, sir, this is my job. You were my chief minister, my boss till we came here. As soon as the governor, who is the constitutional authority, said, you are dismissed, you are no longer chief minister. And I am bound by the constitution to obey him. So I have to move you out. I heard those words. And Mahendra was a very nice man. And he said, sir, please come with me. And there was a police van which had pulled up. And NTR got into the van. And the rest, of course, is history. But there is some strength in the constitutional arrangements. That was a fraud. Because, they said that Nadella Bhaskara had the majority. But sometimes you might have a genuine case where there is a complete breakdown of the constitutional mechanism. You have to have some way of taking charge. That's why the beauty of the constitution is it comes into play. But what happens when you get small fellows? Like the Ramlals and like this fellow in Tamil Nadu, Ravi, and our lady here, who are petty politicians. Ravi has been a lifelong IB fellow, and he's mouths all kinds of Sanghi prattle about Aryans and Dravidians and all that. And this lady was the president of the Tamil Nadu BJP till she came here. And first thing she does is she goes to that illegal Bhagilakshmi temple, which is illegally constructed. Archaeological Society says it's illegal and offers prayers. Now, so you get such small people becoming governors. And she's now running a parallel darbar. She's receiving people with complaints, petitions. So you'll have people willing to give petitions all the time to anybody.
Yeah.
So they go to the Raj Bhavan, and that's basically to irritate the chief minister, which is the legitimate elected government. And these people are not even have no legitimacy in the sense that they are
Which
appointed.
probably means that the incumbents do not understand the dignity of the office.
Absolutely.
One, and secondly, the powers that be who appoint governors choose them not for their accomplishments, not for their constitutional awareness, consciousness, and for their dignity, for their competence to hold an office of that kind, who is some kind of an advisor, a guardian, a mentor to the state government, advise the chief minister, mentor the state government, and of course they have special provisions where they are the guardians of the tribal areas, but they just
The
don't do
governor
it.
has submitted a report on Section 25A.
Exactly, which means that they are now agents of, as NTR used to call, agents of the central government, undermining the federal structure of our republic.
Absolutely.
And this has not started today. It started long ago.
That's because of the kind of people. At one time, retired secretaries to government, retired Supreme Court judges, service chiefs used to become governors, and they conducted their offices with some probity and some dignity. Then we started sending discarded politicians.
It's a parking lot.
At the parking lot. Even they conducted themselves by and large. But now the active partisanship is a relatively new phenomenon. You're seeing it in the last few. And we saw it in the ugliest form during Ramlal's time. That was in '84. But since then it's going downhill. With absolutely no dignity. Governor, the Nadir, of course, was our friend Narendra Tiwari in the Rajbhavan, all his shenanigans there. So they try to run an influence center. The governor's office also become a place to make money. Because after all, the governor calls the secretary to government and says, please look into this. He
Yeah.
look into it.
Yes.
Out of respect.
And the former J&K governor, he very clearly, yes, he said that some of these people have come and each file was to the tune of about 200 crores.
But then he was not the constitutional governor. He was the de facto ruler because there's president's rule. He was the executive government.
Yeah.
So I can understand that. But for a constitutional government, not an executive government, then he has to work a little bit. So he has to get things done, to make money and all that. And they make money. There's no doubt about it. Governor's office also misused. Because once they're in the habit of collecting money for signature for a passport, they'll collect money for everywhere. But can we do without it?
Why can't we do without it?
So then who will? There's a constitutional hinge where the federal governments and the state governments kind of meet, and that is through the governor. And what happens if all constitutional arrangements break down in the state? Who takes over? Who is to inform the center that the total chaos?
But there are so many models. For instance, you have a directly elected governor in many democracies. You have to change the system. That's what I'm saying. I mean, we need to think, afresh. I mean, why this?
Then the charade of a constitutional president, supreme commander, vested with all this, all that, but with no powers.
Yeah.
He's bound to act by the advice of the council of ministers. Online.
So very ceremonial.
Yeah. And quite often they find it difficult to be that ceremonial. We saw in the case of Zanzibar. You're actively playing politics. We saw in other cases where children of governors or presidents were misusing that building. We saw in the case of many, I won't mention names now,
Yeah.
but that also tends to be misused. But people like Modi and Shah have been talking about directly elected governments. Why should a presidential form of government, a chief executive form of government? But from there to, without checks and balances, without some constitutional balance, you can lapse into a totalitarian state very easily, particularly for us. But the tendencies are always there. Even a prime minister has assumed so much of power today. All prime ministers. I'm not saying this particularly. But ever since the PMO became central, there's a parallel administration running. There are parallel.
And that is replicated in all the states, the CMO. Yeah.
So so governor does to some extent is required in this present constitution, this present arrangement, to be there to fulfill a certain requirement. But the governor is supposed to conduct himself or herself with great dignity and probity. You find that this governor, this Ravi, will not behave like that if he's sent to UP. Or but you send him to Rajasthan, he'll do the same thing. He'll find some other way to.
So it's the central government, the ruling party, and the ruling party's appointees, and the ruling party appointing people who are who will do their bidding, rather than people with probity, people with dignity.
The speciality should be on who can become a governor. So you can easily have a diktat saying that, director saying that you should be either have been a secretary to government or chief secretary of the state, or a service chief, or a judge, Supreme Court or High Court judge, a person who's held a weighty office and is endowed with personal
But Mohan, do you think at any time, not today, but since our constitution has come into force, did any governor really act on their own without the directions or diktat from the union government, the home ministry, or independently giving an objective report of the affairs of state?
I think governors have done that from time to time. When you had good, a certain class of governors, they have sent reports. I think in Indira Gandhi's time, Jawaharlal's time, they used to get reports about. There's the famous case in Madhya Pradesh of the governor informing the prime minister of corruption by state ministers. And that particular minister was trapped, arrested, convicted at the behest of Jawaharlal Nehru. Because governor informed. So that kind of functioning has taken place in the past. But now, I must say without exception, that they're all rotten to the core. They're professional politicians, fellows who lost elections, absolutely no intellect, no capability. Get in because of. I've stayed in a few radicals. I know these fellows have no work at all. But then I tell the government that you're not supposed to have any. No file is supposed to come to you. Enjoy yourself. See that. So governor would, I say in one night, the governor and I would discuss the menu for the day. What will we have for breakfast tomorrow? Shall we get some fish? That kind of stuff. So that's one way of governorship. And the chief minister would come to discuss things. And we'd have a few dinners here and there.
That's a very formal kind of
Formal kind. The constitutional governor to be seen, not to be heard. You know? But what is happening now is activism. It's utterly despicable. They should not be taking part in any partisan politics.
And the maintenance of governor's office, Raj Bhavan, and the entire, the setup is not inexpensive.
Very expensive.
It is expensive, and to me, it looks very dysfunctional, and maybe it's not useful, and prone to be misused, misutilized, and
4 lakhs.
yeah.
And the lifelong medical benefits, not only for the governor but to his family.
Yeah.
Lifelong. So if you've got grandchildren living in your house, you are getting.
So with all this, I think we need to think of alternative structures, alternative institutions where the checks and balances in states, checks and balances between the state and the center can be maintained, even at the center. I mean, I do not want to, because we are talking about governors, but if you extend it a bit, look at the office of the president in our republic.
True, but the president is an elected person. The governor is purely an appointed.
Yes.
And that is what makes it a little obnoxious, because by whims and fancies, you become a governor.
But all these people elect the president and do what?
UP had a governor who was Rajiv Gandhi's PSO.
Yeah.
Close to the family, made him a governor. So you denigrate the.
And then governorships are offered to members of the judiciary, as post-retirement benefits, to get favorable directions, and
that way it should be terminal. The Chief Justice of India don't get anything else after that. You go home. I think we should give Chief Justice of India full pay.
Or whatever, something can be but not to
hanker for a job.
Yes.
Service chiefs should be getting that. So we should do that. But here we hold the law of a governorship. I remember when we had an army chief called Vipin Joshi, who died in service. Vipin Joshi, one day, I knew him quite well, so we were talking and he said, I'm going to meet the press in Jabalpur for some vehicle launch. Anything I should tell the press. So I just said, tell the press in passing that I have become army chief, the highest job I have aspired to in my life. And I'm not interested in any more jobs after that. There was consternation in the PMO. Saying, what is this guy? Is he going out of control? There was actually inquiry made. So this lolly of a government.
So the powers that be would like these people to aspire for, some post-retirement parking lot.
And like you said, any active or, a person with some self-respect would not want this absolutely useless job. With nothing to do. When things are okay. Things are not normal, government falls, there's the president's rule, and then you're then de facto chief minister.
Yeah.
There are governors who've done good in that time, there are governors who've done great harm. You remember, for a long time there was insurgency in Punjab, there was president's rule. When the new popular government was elected, the governor's plane crashed. And 100 rupee note bundles of thrown all over the fields in Parakala. Because, that's what the Raj Bhavan had become. So I think, and governor sets the tone for the bureaucracy. Governor can meet secretaries to different departments and get-togethers to the Raj Bhavan. I remember when Shankar Dal Sharma was governor, we used to, the local chapter of the Harvard Club would meet in his house because he went to Harvard Law School. So we used to meet there. And he used to call a few secretaries to come. We used to have dinner and good conversation.
As long as the incumbent is dignified, competent, commands respect, intellectually of a high caliber, and beyond somebody pointing out that he had these kind of deals or whatever. As long as that kind of a person occupies or that kind of a people are appointed, we don't have much to complain. Although the question remains, do we really need this kind of an office to run our republic? So one thing is because people of low caliber have come to occupy this increasingly. Questions about the relevance or the desirability of the governor's office is one. But even if people of competence, of dignity are appointed, do you really need that kind of an office today is another question.
I think in the present system, it becomes key. We're going to change the system to be a more presidential.
Shouldn't we change the system?
We should. I think we should. I long for it. I've been even saying the six should have directly elected government.
So my point has always been, since we started these dialogues, we should take this opportunity of, Amrit Mahotsav, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, and see one of the important offices. Every state has this office. We have governor and lieutenant governors. Why are they there? What is their relevance? Do we need to have them? And if at all, are there any functions really demarcated for them? Do they have an authority?
I think we should have a discussion. What are the qualifications?
Qualifications. If at all we think that we require, but what are the kind of people that have to be?
And then we have qualifications. And then appointments committee.
Or should there be an appointments committee, or should there be some kind of an indirect election, as we have it for the vice president and the president?
Yeah, you could do that. You could do that. State assemblies and all the elected bodies are there. You could have that. So the governor coming from the same state, there is a competition for legitimacy. Governor also becomes directly elected. So there would be issues on how is power to be shared. One is going to be an elected powerless person. One is going to be an elected all-powerful person. So I think you need to get a new balance out there. But this certainly needs a lot of discussion. It's not a simple thing as get rid of the job and everything will be okay. The system will not function without this present system will not function without that man.
So there are two things, Mohan. As far as I can look at it is that one, if we were to continue this system, how do we reform the office of governor? How do we, make it more respectable, more accountable, and functions, and the kind of criteria for appointment, etc. One, and secondly, also to look at if at all we get rid of this office, which is expensive, which is dysfunctional, which could be misused. What are the structures that we put in place in order to fill that kind of a gap, and if there is any gap at all?
I think we need a kind of administrative commission which chooses people for these jobs. Like CBI director is chosen. So many jobs which we choose people. Vigilance commission chosen by the committee. So you can have similar arrangement.
Information commission.
Similar arrangement so that all this riffraff goes on. And it should not be an appointment by the Indian Home Minister. Any Home Minister.
So it could be like, some of the appointments are made by the government and a committee which consists of the leaders of the opposition and the judiciary is a committee. So
That will work perfectly well.
yeah.
And you then prescribe certain laws. Should not have been. And if you say that you no longer politics, then you retire. You say, I'm retired now, completely, period. I'm not going to go and contest election or take up a party office again. You're out of it.
But you have cases where the governors have been governors and after that they've gone back to active politics, have become chief ministers and have become ministers. Yes, Shinde was
sitting in UP,
yeah.
meddling around in politics here,
Yeah.
then came back and contested election and became chief minister.
Shinde.
Yeah.
Shinde was governor here and then went back to active politics and become home minister.
Home minister. Yeah. So that should not be enough. That once you're a governor, it's on your way out of politics and you go to the happy.
Because that casts a shadow of doubt, about their impartiality.
But I think some jobs should be terminal in that sense that you can't keep going in and out. Like if you're governor, then you're only now qualified to be pre-qualified for president.
Vice president or president, yeah.
Yes. The rest you're out of it. But that's all by convention. You can't keep writing everything.
Exactly.
But basically, our leaders, people who decide these things, should have a sense of responsibility, a sense of decency. How will you get that? You can ensure you get qualified government. How do you get a qualified home minister? How do you get a qualified prime minister?
Yeah.
They are elected. People have a right to make their choice. And the system throws up. You don't elect a home minister, but the system throws them up. And the system, by and large, acquiesces to him, agrees to him. So, it's a tough question, but then
Because you see, maybe in the 50s, 60s, even up to 70s or 80s, if you stretch it a bit, the governance was more politically driven, etc. But today it's very policy driven. You need a lot of competence because you see, you have seen ministers. They largely left the governance and decision making, policy making to the bureaucracy, the chief secretary and the secretaries. But today, that's not sufficient. The minister also will need to be an informed person, a qualified person who could take decisions, who could envision things, who can think up new things and give a direction. If that is missing in the modern days, in the present century, it's so difficult really to, yeah.
You don't get policy directions from the minister. You get policy directions from the secretary.
Yes.
So the minister is more interested in implementing the policy.
Transfers,
sanction
giving
of
permissions.
funds,
Yes.
that. And secretary is giving policy ideas. I think we should do this. I think. So that's a distortion in the system. But how do we get better people into politics? That's a whole different.
No, the whole thing again boils down to what Dr. Ambedkar had said, that it's not the constitution that fails you. It's the people who man the constitution, the institutions that they failed. Having said that, while agreeing to that, it's also important that even if people want to fail the system, it should become increasingly difficult for them to fail the system. That kind of a mechanism, that kind of a framework we have to evolve, isn't it?
True, but it's going to be very difficult.
And
how are you going to determine?
I think, well, I do not know if we can really arrive at some kind of a solution, but I think the churning should start.
Absolutely, we should start talking about it.
Especially this year.
And the governor should not be a sacred cow.
Yep.
That we can't say anything about the governor. And because governors are misbehaving rampantly, exceeding all limits.
Exactly.
And
governors directly calling for the resignation of vice chancellor.
Absolutely ridiculous. And once the finance minister tells the finance minister, I can dismiss you.
Yes.
Can't do that.
I'm withdrawing you with the pleasure.
Take time. Let's see.
Yep. Thank you.